Friends, today's video will truly touch your heart, and may even bring tears to your eyes. This is an unbelievable story that proves how love, forgiveness, and hope can change a person's life completely. That's why I'll request you, please don't skip or fast forward. Watch this video till the very end. If you enjoy the story, don't forget to give it a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. And yes, let us know in the comments which country you are watching this video from. We'd love to hear from you. So, let's get started. Sophia Reynolds had once been the kind of woman who owned every room she entered. A sharp business mind, a self-made millionaire in New York City, she lived with elegance and icy determination. But 3 years earlier, a car accident had shattered her spine and left her confined to a wheelchair. Since then, her life had narrowed to hospital rooms, endless therapy sessions, and lonely evenings where silence pressed against her like a weight. She had grown used to people staring, sometimes with pity, sometimes with curiosity. That was why she escaped most afternoons to Central Park, where she could disappear into the crowd, breathing in the laughter of strangers and the rustle of leaves. It was her sanctuary, away from board meetings that still carried on without her, away from friends who no longer knew how to approach her. One cool autumn evening, as she sat near the Bethesda fountain, a boy no older than 7 approached her. He had bright blonde hair, freckled cheeks, and an unusual confidence in his stride. Without hesitation, he looked her in the eye and said, "I can make you walk again." Sophia let out a short, bitter laugh. It was the same laugh that had become her armor, sharp enough to keep people from coming too close. "Really? You think you can do what dozens of surgeons and specialists couldn't?" she asked, straightening the white blazer she always wore like a shield. The boy didn't flinch. Instead, he extended his small hand. "My name is Matthew. And I know a secret." Something about his seriousness unsettled her. Against her better judgment, she reached out and shook his hand. "All right, Matthew," she said, her voice touched with sarcasm. "What's your big secret?" "The secret about you," he answered quietly, with a weight far beyond his years. "About why your legs don't work anymore." Sophia froze. For a moment, the noise of the city faded away. Her heart pounded painfully against her ribs. Doctors had always insisted her paralysis came from the accident, from the damage to her spinal cord. But the way Matthew spoke, it was as if he knew something different. "This isn't funny, kid," she snapped, though her voice trembled. "Who told you to say that?" Matthew looked at her with unwavering eyes. "You fired my grandmother 4 years ago. Her name was Dolores Ramirez." The name hit Sophia like a punch to the chest. Dolores had been her housekeeper for nearly 15 years. More than that, she had been family. A second mother. Sophia's throat tightened. "Where did you hear that name?" she whispered. "My grandma told me everything," Matthew replied softly. "She said one day I'd find you. And when I did, I was supposed to help you." "Help me with what?" Matthew's expression softened into something almost angelic. "To forgive yourself?" The words cracked something inside her. Forgiveness was a language Sophia had buried long ago. She forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I don't need anyone's forgiveness," she lied. Matthew shook his head. "Not hers. Yours." No one had spoken to her with such warmth in years, not since she'd become the cold, untouchable woman people feared. And now, a child was peeling away her defenses with nothing more than honesty. Her eyes stung with sudden tears. She turned away, gripping the pearls around her neck, the same necklace that had started it all, the one she had once accused Dolores of stealing. She remembered that day vividly, the shouting, the humiliation, the way Dolores had left in tears. "How do you know about this necklace?" Sophia asked, her voice breaking. "Because my grandma saw who really took it," Matthew said, lowering his voice. "It was your husband. Alejandro." Sophia's world tilted. The name of her ex-husband was like an open wound. Alejandro, the man who had betrayed her trust, stolen her fortune, and left her life in ruins. She felt dizzy, gripping the arms of her wheelchair. How could she have known? Because she saw it with her own eyes, Matthew answered simply. But you never let her explain. You didn't want to hear the truth back then. Tears streamed freely down Sophia's cheeks. The boy's words pierced straight into the guilt she had carried for years. Dolores had known the truth all along, and Sophia's rage had blinded her from hearing it. "Where is your grandmother now?" she asked desperately. Matthew's shoulders sank. "She's very sick. Ever since she left your house, she hasn't been the same. My mom says she's been dying a little every day." Sophia's chest ached with unbearable pain. Dolores, the woman who had loved her like family, was suffering because of her cruelty. For the first time in years, Sophia whispered a plea she thought she had forgotten. "I need to see her. Please, Matthew. Take me to her." But the boy shook his head. "She doesn't want to see you. She thinks you're too happy with your rich life to even remember her." Sophia's voice broke. "I'm not happy. I haven't been happy since the day she left." Matthew studied her for a long moment, as if measuring the truth in her words. Then he asked quietly, "Do you really want to walk again?" Sophia swallowed hard. "More than anything." "Then you'll have to do something very hard," Matthew said gently. "You'll have to remember the woman my grandmother once loved like a daughter. You'll have to remember who you were before all the pain." For the first time in 3 years, Sophia felt something stir inside her, not just sorrow, but the faintest spark of hope. The next afternoon, a pale November sun spilled across Central Park, turning the treetops to copper and fire. Sophia arrived 15 minutes early, heart thudding with a restless mix of fear and anticipation. She stopped in the same spot by the Bethesda fountain, the place where a stranger child had told her a truth no adult dared say out loud. At exactly 3 p.m., Matthew appeared with a small navy backpack and a serious smile. He sat cross-legged on the grass beside her wheelchair, as if they'd been meeting like this for years. "You came," he said, genuinely pleased. "I said I would," Sophia replied, surprised at the softness in her own voice. "Okay," he nodded. "Then start with one good story about my grandma." Sophia drew a steadying breath. "When Dolores first came to work for me, I was 8 months pregnant with my daughter, Valerie. I was terrified of doing everything wrong. Dolores told me I would be a great mom and that she'd teach me everything her own mother taught her. She stayed up with me on those nights when Valerie wouldn't stop crying. She brewed chamomile tea for me and warm towels for the baby. We laughed at 3 a.m. like two conspirators trying to keep the world from falling apart." Matthew listened as if each word were a pearl he was gathering carefully. "Grandma always said you were the little sister she never had." Sophia surprised herself by laughing, a real laugh, unarmored and bright. "We were. Once, after Alejandro snapped at her over dinner, we changed the menu just to rattle him. I swapped the salmon for fish sticks and fries. He was so confused he asked if I was sick. Grandma never told me that part." Matthew giggled, clapping once. Then, as his face settled into quiet focus, he added, "Try to move your feet, please. Just once. For me." Sophia stared at him. "Matthew, that's not how this works. Just try." She closed her eyes, concentrated until her temples throbbed, willed her ankles to twitch. "Nothing. It's okay," he said gently. "We'll try again tomorrow. Tell me another story." And so they built a ritual. Every day at 3 p.m., Sophia rolled to the same patch of park, and Matthew arrived with his backpack and a patience that felt older than time. She told him about Dolores's tiny garden on the townhouse terrace, the tray of purple petunias, the stubborn begonias that only bloomed when someone spoke to them kindly. She told him how Dolores tucked a small flower on the nightstand whenever Sophia had a brutal meeting, how she folded the duvet with a flourish and called it closing the curtain on a hard day. Each afternoon, after a story, he asked her to try. And each afternoon, she closed her eyes, fought the silent war in her body, and failed. But something else began to shift. She woke earlier. Chose a silk scarf instead of the gray cardigan she'd worn all year. Allowed herself lipstick again. And when Evan, Her driver and aide opened the SUV door and steadied the wheelchair. She smiled first. "You look different today, Ms. Reynolds," he said one morning as they turned onto Fifth Avenue. "Different how?" "More alive," he answered, then blushed at his own boldness. "I mean, like you used to look in old photos." Sophia studied him in the window's reflection. Evan was 30, composed and capable, one of the few people she trusted to see her at her weakest. "Evan," she asked quietly, "did you ever meet Dolores?" He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Yes, ma'am. She was still with you when I started. She treated all of us like family, brought tamales at Christmas, asked after my mother by name." He hesitated. "If I may, even the day she left, she never said a bad word about you." Sophia swallowed. "The day she left was the worst thing I've ever done to someone I loved." "She told us you were going through something no one could see," Evan said. "She believed you'd understand it someday." That evening, when Matthew reached the fountain, he instantly sensed the storm behind Sophia's eyes. "What's wrong, Aunt Sophia?" he asked, using the title the way kids do when their hearts have already adopted someone. "I found out more people knew the truth about that day," she said. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because you weren't ready to listen," he answered simply. "Grandma always said timing is part of truth." Sophia thought of the woman she'd been right after Alejandro's betrayal, a wreck of anger and humiliation, clawing for anything to control. "I probably wouldn't have listened," she admitted. Matthew nodded. "She knew you had to walk the long way around to get back to yourself." He unzipped his backpack and pulled out a composition notebook. Its cover was scarred with doodles and fingerprints. "We'll keep track," he said. "One story about Grandma each day, one try moving your feet, and one brave thing you do for someone else." "What brave thing could I possibly?" "How much does a heart surgery cost?" he asked, so casually she almost missed the way his voice shook. Sophia's breath caught. "What?" "Grandma's been in and out of the hospital," he said, eyes fixed on the page. "They say she needs surgery soon. Mom works 3 jobs. My dad's away most weeks. I don't know the number, but whenever Mom whispers about it, she cries." Sophia felt the world narrow to a single, blazing point. She could fund 100 surgeries without blinking. But pride, Dolores's, that elegant, fierce pride, stood like a sentry in her mind. That night, Sophia called Evan into her study. The townhouse was hushed, the city humming softly beyond the windows. "I need your help," she said. "And this stays between us." "Of course. Find Dolores Ramirez." "Which hospital? Which surgeon?" "I want every bill paid by tomorrow morning." She held up a hand. "Anonymously, Evan. No strings. If they ask, it's an anonymous donor who heard about a grandmother in need." Evan's brows knit with concern. "Are you sure you don't want to tell her yourself? If she knows it's me, she might refuse." "Matthew says she's proud?" A small smile tugged at Sophia's mouth. "He's right." The next afternoon, Sophia arrived at the fountain vibrating with a secret. Matthew, however, looked pale. "Grandma got worse last night," he said. "The doctors want to do the surgery right away." Sophia's phone buzzed. "Evan," she answered, turning away. "Yes?" "It's done," he said softly. "Surgery is paid in full. The hospital just called the family." "Thank you." She hung up, pressed her knuckles to her lips to dam the flood of relief, then faced Matthew. "A miracle just happened," she said. "An anonymous donor paid for your grandma's surgery. It's scheduled for today." Matthew's eyes filled before he could stop them. In a heartbeat he was in her lap, arms thrown around her neck, all skinny elbows and unfiltered joy. "I knew you were good luck," he whispered. "Grandma always said you were our guardian angel." Sophia held him, heat blooming in a part of her chest she thought was dead. When he finally slid back to the grass, he wiped his face with the heel of his hand and said, with solemn ceremony, "Now try again. Think about Grandma smiling in her garden. Think about petunias. Then try." She closed her eyes. In her mind, Dolores bent over a tray of purple, murmuring to each stubborn bloom. Sophia pictured the way the older woman's hands, capable, gentle, patted soil and coaxed life. A spark. The faintest prickle in her right foot, like soda bubbles against skin. Her eyes flew open. Matthew, I felt something. Where? My right foot, pins and needles. Tiny but real. He sprang up, pumping his fists. I knew it. How? Doctors said it wasn't possible. They treat bodies, he said, grinning through tears. I'm treating your heart. That evening, Sophia asked Evan to wheel her out to the townhouse garden for the first time since the accident. The beds were neat but sterile, curated by groundskeepers who didn't know the stories of the plants they trimmed. No unruly laughter of color, no stubborn corners where life insisted on breaking rules. What did Dolores plant here? She asked. Petunias, Evan said. Begonias too. She said they need extra love to bloom. Sophia touched the blank soil and whispered, Then let's give them love. The following morning, Evan returned from the hospital with an update. The surgery went well. Her rhythm stabilized. And someone sent a bouquet, purple petunias and begonias, with a card that said, So you'll bloom again, from a friend who never forgot. Sophia looked down, suddenly shy. She'll know it was me. She did, Evan said. She cried. Happy tears. At 3 p.m., Matthew flew across the grass, breathless. It worked! The surgery worked! And she got flowers. She said she knew who sent them. Sophia's pulse trembled between terror and longing. Do you think, when she's stronger, she would see me? Matthew tilted his head, studying her the way he always did, measuring the shape of her truth. I think she's been waiting 3 years for you to come home. He set the notebook on his knee. Ready? One story, one try, one brave thing. Sophia nodded. Story first. She told him about the way Dolores taped birthday cards to the refrigerator a week early, so the house could practice being happy. About the way she hummed boleros while polishing the banister until it shone like honey. About the time she held a shivering, postpartum Sophia and said, You don't have to be strong all the time to be a good mother. You just have to be here. Now try, Matthew whispered. Sophia closed her eyes and lifted the image of Dolores's smile like a lantern in the dark. She concentrated until sweat prickled her hairline. Her toes flickered. The smallest curl. She gasped. Matthew, I moved my toes. I saw. He danced a goofy little circle around the chair, then stopped, suddenly serious. Tomorrow, he said, tapping the notebook. We asked for something bigger. Bigger? Bend your knee. He grinned. And after that, stand. Sophia stared at him, the laugh catching in her throat, not bitter this time but breathless, astonished. For the first time in 3 years, the horizon inside her moved. Hope was no longer a memory, it was a direction. The next morning, Sophia asked Evan to book a salon near Madison Avenue. She wanted to look like herself again, hair smooth, pearl studs back in her ears, a soft navy dress instead of the monochrome suits she'd been hiding behind. By noon, she texted Matthew, If your grandma is up for it, I'd like to visit today. Only if she's comfortable. Matthew replied almost immediately, She is. Come at 3. Same time as the fountain, different place. He added the room number at Mount Sinai, just across from the park. On the drive up 5th Avenue, the city flashed by, brownstones and doormen, parents steering strollers, runners cutting along the reservoir's edge. Sophia's palms were damp. Evan, she murmured, if she asks who paid for the surgery. You don't owe her an explanation, he said gently. But if you want to tell her the truth you can live with. At the hospital, antiseptic air met them with a chill. Outside the room, Sophia stopped. Matthew, she whispered as he slipped into the hallway. Would you go in first? Tell her I'm here. He nodded and disappeared. Low voices. A small gasp. Then the voice Sophia had carried in memory like a lullaby. My sweet girl. Evan rolled her in. Dolores Ramirez lay propped on pillows, silver hair tucked behind her ears, an oxygen cannula threading along her cheekbones. Her smile, though warm and steady, was exactly as Sophia remembered it. Matthew stood by the bed, his hand tucked into his grandmother's. For a breathless second, no one spoke. Then Sophia whispered, "Dolores!" The name fractured something inside her. Tears blurred the room. "My dear Sophia," Dolores answered, extending a trembling hand. Sophia took it with both of hers. The contact sent a rush of home through her veins. Coffee at dawn, chamomile at midnight, the rustle of a duvet smoothed flat, and the soft, humming yes of being cared for. "I am so sorry," she said, the words tumbling out. "For that day. For the things I said. For not listening. For the years I stayed away." Dolores squeezed. "And I forgave you the same day," she replied. "You were drowning in pain. I knew you'd find your way back to shore." Sophia shook her head, crying openly now. "I fired you. I humiliated you. And still you were the woman who loved me like family," Dolores said. "One terrible day does not erase 15 good years." Matthew glanced at Evan, then cleared his throat. "Can I say something?" He lifted the battered composition notebook. "We've been doing one story, one try, one brave thing every day. Maybe today we try here." Sophia let out a wet laugh. "Here? In a hospital room? Why not?" Matthew said. "Close your eyes. Think about the garden. Think about petunias." Sophia took a breath, closed her eyes, and pictured Dolores's hands pressing soil around a stubborn seedling. She pictured April rain against the townhouse windows, the kitchen filling with the scent of lemon oil and fresh bread, a flower taped to the nightstand. So the house could practice being happy. A fizzing rush traveled down her right shin. Her ankle twitched. Her eyes flew open. "There, did you see it?" "I did," Matthew said, breathless. "Again. Try to bend your knee." Sophia stared at her lap. Her mind shouted at a silent muscle. For 3 seconds nothing happened, and then, as if some tiny door unlatched, her right knee drew a shallow arc. Dolores slapped her free hand over her mouth. Evan exhaled a wordless prayer. Sophia laughed and sobbed at once. "I felt it. I really felt it." A soft knock. A cardiology nurse peeked in and beamed at the scene. "Best sounds I've heard all day," she said, checking Dolores's vitals, then slipped out, leaving the door ajar. Dolores stroked Sophia's knuckles with her thumb. "You remember what I used to say about stubborn begonias?" she asked. "They need extra love to bloom," Sophia whispered. "And patience," Dolores added. "Hearts, too." Evan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Ms. Reynolds, I spoke with Dr. Levin this morning. He reviewed your latest scans. The core damage has healed more than anyone expected. He thinks there's no structural reason you can't stand, with support. He called it a wall built by grief. His words." Sophia's breath hitched. "A wall," she repeated, tasting the truth of it. Matthew moved to the far side of the bed and patted the sturdy grab bar. "Then let's put a window in that wall," he said. "We don't have to knock it down today. Just see through it." Dolores nodded toward the bar. "One hand here. Evan on the chair break. I'll count the breath." They moved like a small choir around a delicate instrument. Evan locked the wheelchair wheels and braced her forearms. Matthew steadied the four-pole. Dolores set the rhythm. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. On the fourth cycle, Sophia pressed through her heels. Quads trembled. Hips screamed their rusty protest. She thought of the accident's crumpled metal, of Alejandro's lies, of a pearl necklace burning like a verdict against her throat. Then she thought of birthday cards taped to the fridge a week early, of a white towel warmed for a colicky baby, of purple petunias refusing to quit. Her body rose an inch. 2. 3. Knees shaking, she hovered above the cushion, not quite standing, not quite sitting, balanced on the ledge between fear and flight. "I'm up," she whispered, astonished. I'm up. Dolores let out a sound equal parts laugh and sob. My girl, she said, tears shining. My girl. Sophia eased back down, breath sawing in her chest, cheeks wet and flushed. Matthew wiped at his eyes with the heel of his hand and announced, a little hoarse. That counts as 2 brave things. Evan pressed the tissue into Sophia's palm. For what it's worth, he said quietly, this was always inside you. You just needed the right room. Sophia turned to Dolores. There's something else, she said. The flowers were from me. And the donation. The confession came out small, as if she were 10 and telling the truth after a prank. I didn't want pride to keep you from care. Dolores's smile deepened. I knew, she said gently. The card said bloom again. No one else would have written that. Her fingers tightened around Sophia's. Thank you, daughter. The word rang through Sophia like a bell. Matthew cleared his throat. Aunt Sophia, can we make a deal? He asked. Name it. You keep coming, to the park, to this room, to physical therapy when they say it's time. I'll keep bringing stories and counting breaths. Sophia looked from the boy to the woman who had been her truest home. Deal, she said. A volunteer wheeled in a vase of fresh-cut flowers and set it on the windowsill, purple petunias, coral begonias, a spray of baby's breath like tiny stars. Sun slanted across the linoleum, a pale winter gold. Outside, Central Park glimmered with bare trees and a ribbon of runners tracing its edge. Sophia tilted her head toward the glass. When you're discharged, she told Dolores, I want you to come stay with me. Not as staff. As family. I'll make too much tea and ask you about everything I've missed. Dolores's eyes went soft. Only if we plant the garden together again, she bargained. From scratch. From scratch, Sophia agreed. Matthew wrote it into his notebook as if scribing a covenant. Garden together. From scratch. When visiting hours ended, Evan rolled the chair to the door. Matthew hugged his grandmother, then knelt eye level with Sophia. Same time tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow, she said, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. And the day after that. And the day after that. Back in the hallway, Evan pushed toward the elevators. Sophia pressed her fingertips against her right thigh, half afraid the morning had been a dream. The muscle twitched under her hand, quick as a sparrow. In the mirrored panel above the call buttons, she caught her reflection, pearls at her throat, hair neatly tucked, eyes rimmed in red and bright with something she had almost forgotten how to carry. Hope wasn't a rumor anymore. It was a posture. And for the first time in 3 years she had risen to meet it. The winter sky over Manhattan looked like brushed steel when Sophia reached Central Park the next day. She could feel the city's pulse through the wheelchair's armrests, delivery trucks hissing at curbs, a saxophone unfurling a melody somewhere near the mall, joggers exhaling steam into the cold. Matthew came sprinting across the lawn, scarf flying. It worked, he blurted before he'd even caught his breath. Grandma's surgery went great. The doctor said her rhythm is steady, like a drum. Sophia let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Thank God. The relief was so pure it made her lightheaded. Can we go see her? Matthew asked. Already called, Sophia said. They'll let us in after lunch. At Mount Sinai, the cardiac floor hummed with quiet urgency. Dolores was sitting up, a faint blush on her cheeks, the cannula gone. A paper cup of chamomile tea steamed on the tray table, perfuming the antiseptic air. You look like a sunrise, Sophia said, rolling to the bedside. And you, Dolores replied, eyes dancing to the pearls at Sophia's throat. Look like the girl I used to wake at dawn. Matthew set his scuffed composition notebook on the tray. Story. Try. Brave thing, he declared, tapping each word as if it were a button that turned the room on. Sophia told a story about a January blizzard years ago, when the city shuttered and Dolores turned the townhouse kitchen into a camp. Hot chocolate on the stove, cinnamon on toast, a candle glowing in a jam jar. We ate by candlelight and pretended the world had paused just to let us breathe, Sophia said, smiling at the memory. Now try, Matthew whispered. A physical therapist named Kara slipped in, all practical kindness and ponytail and trainers. If you're game, she said softly to Sophia, we can use the portable bars. Evan braced the wheelchair. Matthew held the four-pole like a standard bearer. Breath in, 2, 3. Dolores counted, voice steady as a metronome. Sophia pressed down through her heels. Electricity rippled up her calves. Her right knee answered first, then, to her own astonishment, the left. She rose into a stand so tentative it barely qualified, but she was there, stacked over her own bones, weight humming through the soles of her feet. Kara's eyes shone. 2 seconds, she murmured. Let's try for 4. They reached 5. When Sophia lowered back to the cushion, she was shaking and laughing, tears slick on her cheeks. Dolores kissed her knuckles. Stubborn begonias, she said. I told you they bloom when someone speaks to them kindly. That night, Sophia insisted on visiting the townhouse garden. Evan wheeled her out to the brick courtyard behind the brownstone. The planters looked prim and empty, winter-tidy but heartless. We're changing this, Sophia said. No more museum garden. What do you have in mind? Evan asked. Color. Life. Plants that demand attention. She smiled at the memory of Dolores lecturing petunias as if they were rowdy cousins. Let's order grow lights for the mudroom, seed trays, potting soil. We'll start them inside and move them out in spring. Evan grinned. On it. The next morning, Sophia called the hospital as soon as they would let her. Can I bring Dolores home when she's cleared? She asked the discharged nurse. To my home. As family. There was a short, professional pause, followed by warmth. That will do her more good than any medicine. By afternoon, a handyman had installed grab bars in the townhouse's primary guest suite and widened a doorframe. Evan organized linens and ordered an adjustable bed. On the fireplace mantel, Sophia placed a silver frame, an old photo of her and Dolores in the kitchen, flour on both noses, a pie between them like a prize. House is ready, Evan reported, fastening the last screw on a shower chair. So am I, Sophia said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. On discharge day, a pale sun slipped between buildings, gilding the hospital's glass as if blessing the threshold. Dolores wore a soft sweater and lipstick the color of rose tea. Matthew carried a small duffel and a ridiculous bouquet he'd made himself from tissue paper and tape. At the townhouse, the staff lined the hall, not as employees but as a receiving line for a beloved aunt. Sophia rolled forward, palms damp. Wait, she said to Evan, voice low. Let me try. He locked the wheelchair. Kara, who had offered to stop by on her own time, nodded once. Hands on the arms. Hips forward. Breath. Sophia leaned into the rhythm Dolores set. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. She rose. Wobbly, yes, but up. Matthew slid to her side and placed 2 small fingers under her elbow, purely ceremonial. Evan hovered, ready but not crowding. Sophia took a tiny step, then another. The hallway rug's pattern, indigo vines and tiny coral flowers, moved beneath her like a river. Dolores covered her mouth. My girl, she whispered, the words fogging in the winter light. My beautiful, stubborn girl. Sophia made it 3 steps before lowering into a chair near the stairwell, breathless and euphoric. Matthew whooped like a little leaguer after a first base hit. Evan's eyes were suspiciously wet. Tonight, Sophia said, we celebrate. Celebrate meant roasted chicken and rosemary potatoes in the dining room, the best china on a Tuesday because rules no longer applied. Matthew's mother, Anna, arrived after her shift at the bakery, uniform dusted with sugar. She stood shyly at the threshold until Dolores waved her in as if pulling a daughter across the sill. To first steps, Evan said, raising a glass of sparkling cider. And second chances, Anna added, clinking gently. Late, when the house was quiet, Sophia sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen that felt good between her fingers. She wrote 3 lists. Stories to tell Matthew, small mercies, kitchen storms, the day the elevator broke and they picnicked on the landing. Brave things, call Valerie. Ask Kara about an aggressive PT plan. Plant something even though it's winter. What comes next? A heading she underlined twice and left blank for now. She was dialing before she talked herself out of it. The line rang to Los Angeles, 3 hours earlier, where her daughter Valerie worked long days on a streaming series in post-production. "Mom?" Valerie answered, wary and warm all at once. "Everything okay?" "I wanted to hear your voice," Sophia said, and then, because brave things were promises you kept to yourself, added, "And to tell you something. 2 things. Tell me." "I stood today." Silence crackled for a heartbeat on the coast-to-coast wire. "Not for long. But I stood. With help." "Mom," Valerie breathed, voice collapsing into tears and laughter. "Are you serious?" "I am." Sophia swallowed. "And Dolores is home. Here. With me." Valerie exhaled a sound that was relief and memory. "I'll be on a plane Friday. Come hungry," Sophia said. "She'll make you tea and tell you everything I forgot to tell you." The next week arranged itself around therapy and tenderness. Kara met Sophia in the townhouse twice a day. "We stack wins," she said. 5 seconds becomes 10. 10 steps become 12. They used resistance bands the color of popsicles and a lightweight brace that hugged the treacherous left ankle. When the weather cooperated, Evan walked beside Sophia on the garden's brick loop while Dolores lectured seed catalogs like a general planning a campaign. At the Union Square Green Market, Sophia rode in a mobility scooter and pointed at flats of pansies and winter hardy kale. "These for now," she told the vendor. "Petunias and begonias on order for spring." The vendor, a woman in a quilted vest with soil permanently under her nails, nodded in approval. "You're planting hope," she said. "Best crop there is." Back home, Matthew orchestrated a potting assembly line in the mudroom under the new glow of grow lights. "Every tray gets a name," he said, handing Sophia a Sharpie. She labeled them with the shameless optimism of a reborn gardener: persistence, mercy, begin again. One evening, after a long session of gait training, Sophia sank into the living room sofa while Matthew built a fortress out of throw pillows on the rug. Dolores disappeared down the hall and returned with a battered shoebox tied with kitchen string. "I've been deciding when to give you these," she said, setting the box in Sophia's lap. "The answer is now." Inside lay a stack of letters, some written on lined paper, others on the backs of recipe cards, one on a calendar page from 3 years ago. The top envelope said "For the day you come home" in Dolores's looping hand. Sophia opened it with fingers that trembled. "My dear Sophia," the letter began, "today you turn 47. Matthew asked if you are happy? I told him happiness is patient. It waits while we find our way back to ourselves. If you ever need me, I am here. I am always here." By the time she reached the signature, "With all the love in the world, Dolores," Sophia's vision was a blur. She reached for Dolores's hand and held it to her cheek. "I don't deserve this much grace," she whispered. "Grace is not about deserving," Dolores said. "It's about giving more than the hurt can carry." On Friday, Valerie burst through the front door trailing airport air and film editing exhaustion. She saw Sophia standing, hands light on the kitchen island, knees quivering but steady, and sobbed into her mother's shoulder like a child who'd finally been allowed to come home from a storm. Dolores made tea and slid a plate of conchas across the counter, as if to bless the reunion with sugar. They ate at the kitchen table, mother, daughter, mother of the heart, and a boy who had appointed himself guardian of everyone's hope. Valerie listened to the story from the beginning, the park, the pearls, the promise. When it was done, she wiped her face and shook her head in wonder. "I don't recognize you," she told Sophia, and meant, "I recognize you at last." That night, after Valerie fell asleep in the guest room and the townhouse exhaled into quiet, Sophia went back to her legal pad and wrote under what comes next: "Build a place that treats bodies and hearts at once." She stared at the words until they felt less like a sentence and more like a door. "Evan," she said the next morning as he poured coffee. How hard is it to start a foundation? Depends, he said, setting the mug within reach. How big do you want the door to be? Big enough, she answered, looking toward the mudroom where trays labeled Begin Again were already greening under light. For the whole city to walk through. They named it Bloom House. By spring, Sophia had sold a slice of her holding company and signed a long lease on a sunlit pre-war building on the east side of Central Park, a former art school with wide hallways, high ceilings, and a deep interior courtyard that begged to be a garden. Evan became operations director. Kara built the physical therapy program. Sophia recruited a small team, an occupational therapist with a drummer's rhythm, a speech pathologist who kept origami cranes on her desk, and Dr. Maya Chin, a psychologist with a gift for sitting in silence until hard truths rose on their own. Dolores walked in on day one, ran her palm along the reception desk, and said, "This place needs a kettle." By afternoon there was a tea station beneath a hand-lettered sign that read, "You don't have to be brave yet. Have tea first." Matthew, wearing a lanyard too big for his neck, grinned for his ID photo. His title, at his insistence, was Hope Ambassador. The motto was simple and radical at once: treat the body and the heart together. Mornings were for gait training, parallel bars, braces, and bands. Afternoons were for lightening the load, forgiveness circles, letter writing, quiet rooms with plants and soft chairs where people could set down what they'd carried alone. In the courtyard, Sophia and Dolores laid soil with their own hands. They planted petunias and begonias in wide beds around a path of brick, each patch labeled with small copper tags: Patience, Mercy, Begin Again. On a rainy Tuesday, a new intake arrived in a wheelchair, jacket zipped to her chin as if to keep herself from spilling. "I'm Carmen Morales," she said, eyes fixed on the floor. 60, hair clipped neatly, grief hanging off her like weight. Sophia rolled beside her down the hall. "Welcome to Bloom House, Carmen. What do you hope will be different 6 months from now?" "That I'm less angry," she said, surprising herself. "I thought I would say walking, but the truth is, I wake up angry and I go to bed angry." "In here?" Sophia asked, tapping her chest lightly. Carmen nodded once. They settled in the courtyard, rain stippling the brick, the garden shining like fresh paint. "Can I ask you something harder?" Sophia said. Carmen glanced over, wary but curious. "What hurts more right now, your legs not moving, or the thing you haven't forgiven yet?" Carmen's mouth wobbled. "My son," she said. "The accident was his fault. He was drunk. He ran a light. I wasn't supposed to be in that car, but I went to make sure he got home safe, and—" She broke off, knuckles whitening on the armrest. "He left after. Said he couldn't stand to look at me. I haven't seen him in a year." Sophia felt the old ache stir, the one that taught her the shape of a locked heart. "Would you tell me his name?" "Diego," she whispered. "Okay," Sophia said. "Here's what we'll do. We'll train your body and make space for Diego in the same plan. Not to excuse him, never that, but to release your heart from the job of being the jailer." Carmen let out a sound that was almost a laugh. "I don't know if I can." "You don't have to yet," Sophia said, rising. "Have tea first." Over the next weeks, Bloom House found its rhythm. In the gym, Kara counted off reps. Brass shot sunlight across stainless steel rails. In the counseling rooms, Maya listened, then asked the kind of questions that made people sit back and blink. Dolores led a small circle called Letters You May Never Send, where patients wrote to the people who had broken and saved them, where the act of putting ink to paper loosened old knots. The courtyard became its own kind of therapy. Matthew taught patients to name seedlings the way he named the trays at the townhouse: Resolve, Soft Spine, Open Door. He pushed wheelchairs along the brick path and told jokes that should not have been funny but were, because they were offered with pure, ridiculous love. One afternoon, as clouds unbuttoned over the city and a smear of sun found the petunias, Matthew walked up to Carmen with the gravity of a judge. "Ms. Morales," he said, "do you want to borrow my courage? I have extra." She stared, then surprised herself by smiling. "What would I do with it?" Maybe call Diego, he said, as if offering a wrench at a pit stop. You could just ask what kind of day he had. You don't have to talk about the big thing first. Carmen looked at Sophia. Is this official therapy? It's Bloomhouse therapy, Sophia said. Which means we use what works. They made the call together in Sophia's office, door ajar, rain ticking on the window. The phone rang 4 times and went to voicemail. Carmen hung up and breathed like a diver breaking the surface. Tomorrow, she said. I'll try again tomorrow. On the 4th day, Diego answered. His voice was older than his years, raw around the edges. Mom? Hi, Mijo, she said, and had to press a hand to her chest to keep her heart from jumping out. I'm at a place called Bloomhouse. I know, he said softly. I looked it up after you called. I'm in a program too. In Queens. I'm trying, Mom. I swear. Carmen closed her eyes. Rain, breath, the ghost of a steering wheel in her hands. I'm trying too, she said. Would you come? Not today. When you're ready. We could sit in a garden and not say anything stupid for a while. He laughed and cried at once. I could do that. They set a date for the following week. Sophia hung a small wind chime in the courtyard that morning and brewed chamomile strong enough to soothe the storm. Diego arrived in a work shirt with his name stitched above the pocket, grease under his nails, the posture of a man braced for a verdict. Carmen's hand fluttered, then steadied. Sit, she said, nodding to the bench beneath a mulberry. We don't have to talk about the big thing yet. We can look at the plants. They did. Bees visited the petunias like good news. Somewhere down the hall, a piano student practiced scales in the community room. After a long time, Diego whispered, I'm so sorry, Mom. He said it like a prayer, like a confession, like a door opening in a house that had been shut for years. Carmen's shoulders shook. I know, she said. I know you are. Maya joined them the next day for a family session. Boundaries, amends, what trust looks like when it returns slowly, like a shy animal. Diego signed up for a caregiver class. Kara showed him how to spot his mother behind the bars safely, how to hear her breath and know when to stop. Training changed after that. Carmen's push was steadier, her face less knotted with rage. She didn't forgive in a day, no one does, but the valve opened. The gym's mirrors began to reflect someone who believed in futures again. On a bright Thursday, Kara said, Let's try the ankle brace, and fastened a carbon fiber cuff around Carmen's left leg with firm, kind hands. We'll go 2 counts up, 2 counts down. Diego, you're on the left. Matthew, you may encourage. Matthew saluted with a gravity that made Carmen laugh. I can do that. Breath, Dolores said from the doorway, as familiar and precise as a bell. In 2, 3. Out 2, 3. Carmen pressed into her heels. The right knee answered first, the left woke like a slow animal. She rose, half an inch, then more, until she was hovering above the chair, weight shifting to her feet. The room went very quiet, the kind of quiet that protects a newborn moment. I'm up, Carmen whispered, astonished. You're up, Diego echoed, voice breaking. They held it for 3 counts, then 4. When she settled back, she was shaking and laughing and crying all at once, the human symphony of someone who has crossed a line in the sand she drew for herself and thought she'd never step over. Matthew bounced on his toes. Again? He asked hopefully. Again, Carmen said, wiping her cheeks with the heel of her hand. And again. And again. 2 months later, on a soft evening that smelled like rain on warm brick, Bloomhouse held its first little graduation. 4 patients walked the courtyard loop, some with canes, some with braces, one with a swagger that made the staff cheer. Sophia spoke briefly, not from a podium but from the path, hands loose at her sides. This place started as a garden in my head, she said. Then it became a promise. You helped make it true. Remember, your body is not your enemy, and your heart is not a warehouse for other people's sins. Let the good things take up space. Carmen took the microphone last. I thought I came here to learn to walk, she said, eyes shining. But what I learned first was how to put my anger down so my legs had room to stand. My son is here. She gestured to Diego, who was trying and failing not to cry. We're both learning how to be new. After the applause, Sophia slipped back to the edge of the garden. Dolores joined her, leaning on the cane she rarely needed but liked to carry because it felt dignified. The wind chimes sang once, bright as a coin. You did it, Dolores murmured. We did it, Sophia corrected. She looked across the courtyard to where Matthew was showing a toddler how to deadhead petunias. All of us. That night, after the last chair was stacked and the last cup rinsed, Sophia stood alone beneath the courtyard string lights and felt the city breathing beyond the walls. 3 years earlier, she had thought her story ended at a curb on a winter night. Now there was this, brick and blooms and people rising on legs and courage. On her desk upstairs lay a proposal for a new program she and Maya had drafted, a pilot that would invite local kids to spend structured hours with patients, learning how to listen, how to cheer, how to be brave for someone who is tired. Matthew had named it, of course. In a bubble font on the cover, he'd written Kids Help Grown-Ups. Underneath, in smaller letters only Sophia would notice, he'd added, What we wish the world taught in school. Sophia touched the ink with her finger the way a person touches a map before setting out. Tomorrow, the work would begin again, breaths counted, bars gripped, letters written, flowers watered. Tonight, she said thank you, to the garden, to the wind, to the 2 people who had brought her here. Ready, stubborn begonia? Dolores called from the doorway, amusement soft in her voice. Sophia turned, smiling. Ready, she said, and meant, ready for whatever came next. Summer turned the courtyard at Bloom House into a small miracle. Vines climbed the brick in lazy S-shapes, the petunias yelled in color, and a shy cardinal had decided the wind chime was its post. On a Saturday morning in June, Sophia wheeled a cart of lemonade out to the path and watched the first session of Kids Help Grown-Ups assemble like a cheerful parade. 10 children in lanyards, sneakers double-knotted, eyes bright with the solemn excitement of being trusted. Matthew, taller now, hair flopping into his eyes, stood in front with a clipboard. Okay, team, he said. Remember the rules. We listen more than we talk, we cheer effort not outcome, and we never say should. We say try. Kara raised the parallel bars to a new patient's height. Maya tucked into a nearby chair, ready to catch whatever feelings surfaced. Dolores circulated with paper cups of mint tea like a general passing out courage. Sophia watched a 7-year-old named Norse sit on the floor beside a man with a fresh stroke and show him how to slow his breathing by counting the petals on a geranium. On the other side of the courtyard, a boy named Julian told a woman learning to stand, I'll keep time for your knees. He tapped his sneaker, tap, 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 as she rose. By August, the pilot had its first data, faster gains in gait distance, lower reported anxiety, stronger attendance. The numbers mattered, but what moved Sophia most were the notes Maya read aloud at staff meeting. When the kids are here, I forget to be afraid. It felt like my heart stood up first. My legs followed. The press noticed. A city paper ran a feature, where children help adults walk again, and a morning show sent a camera crew to the courtyard on a day the sunlight behaved. The segment caught Sophia talking quietly with Carmen and then standing to walk 3 unassisted steps on the brick loop, Matthew shadowing her like a lighthouse rather than a crutch. After, a journalist asked the question they all asked eventually. What's the secret here? Sophia looked toward Dolores, who was teaching a teenager how to deadhead petunias without apology. No secret, she said. We treat the whole person. Sometimes the paralysis is in the spine. Sometimes it's in the story. We work on both. That fall, Bloom House added evening classes for caregivers, a Saturday music hour in the community room, Evan on borrowed bass, Kara on the gem, and a small scholarship fund Valerie helped structure so no one was turned away. The courtyard hosted weddings for 2 former patients who'd met over resistance bands, and a memorial for someone they had all loved. A ceremony of candles and songs and stories where grief was allowed to take up space without being shushed. Sophia's own body kept stacking wins. 5 seconds became 10. 10 steps became the length of the courtyard path. One afternoon, with Kara spotting and Matthew counting, she made it from the reception desk to the garden door on her own. No brace, no bars, only the quiet astonishment of muscles remembering their job. She paused with her hand on the jamb and let the wind lift her hair. "Stubborn begonia," Dolores murmured, coming alongside to hook an arm through hers. "Look at you." "Look at us," Sophia said. In December, they threw a winter party under strings of warm lights that made the courtyard feel like a snow globe someone had shaken gently, and then set down. Former patients arrived in coats and grins. Someone brought a trumpet. Carmen walked the loop with Diego at her elbow and then stood to make a toast. "I thought healing would feel like a finish line," she said, voice steady. "But it feels more like a garden. Something's blooming, something's resting, everything needing tending. Thank you for teaching me to tend what matters." Matthew climbed onto a chair and lifted his glass of ginger ale. "I learned 2 things this year," he announced, glancing at his notes, and then speaking without them. 1. Sometimes we think we lost everything, but really we were making room. 2. Family is who shows up to count your breaths with you. The courtyard answered with the kind of applause that warms palms. Later, when the last guest had bundled into the cold, Sophia and Dolores sat on the bench beneath the mulberry. The lights hummed. The petunias were asleep under burlap, but the garden still felt awake. "Do you ever miss the old life?" Dolores asked softly. "The boardrooms. The deals." Sophia thought of the pearl necklace coiled in her top drawer, no longer a verdict, just a strand of history. "Sometimes I miss the speed," she said. "But I don't miss who I had to be to keep it. This is a different kind of winning." Dolores nodded, satisfied. "Then we are where we belong." Spring again. The second class of kids helped grown-ups marched in with a handmade banner, and Matthew, now 14, voice lower, heart exactly the same size, trained them using a script he'd written himself. Valerie moved back to New York between projects. She took over fundraising breakfasts and learned how to wheel a transport chair like a pro. On Sundays she and Dolores baked conscious in the townhouse kitchen while Matthew graded homework from the kids' program, respond to a hard feeling without trying to fix it. Evan started bringing a woman named Lex from the music store on 86th. She taught ukulele in the community room and laughed with her whole face. The house made space for her too. In June, Bloom House hit a milestone. 100 patients completed the full program. They marked it with a daytime ceremony, certificates printed on thick paper, a band in the corner, a buffet of things Dolores approved, real food, no diet talk. Sophia spoke briefly, as she always did, and then stepped aside so the graduates could speak for themselves. A man who had flunked his first PT evaluation 3 times held up his certificate and said, "I thought my legs were my enemy. They were just waiting for me to put this down." He tapped his chest. "I put it down." They stood up. A woman who had sworn she would never forgive told the crowd, "I wrote a letter I am never going to send. But writing it made a door in a wall. I walk through it every day." That night, Sophia found Matthew in the courtyard, sitting cross-legged on the brick with the wind chiming above him. He was staring up at the slice of sky the buildings allowed, counting stars that didn't mind being interrupted by Manhattan. "Whatcha thinking?" she asked, lowering herself to the bench without thinking about the choreography, a small miracle all its own. "That we should plant roses," he said. "Something that looks delicate but isn't. Something that proves the point." "Which point?" "That beauty can have thorns and still be beauty." They planted 3 rose bushes the following weekend, one red, one blush, one the color of dawn. Dolores fussed over the soil pH like a scientist. Evan read instructions out loud as if roses had a union, and would file a grievance if he missed a step. Valerie took pictures and labeled them in a shared album: courage, kindness, keep going. 2 years passed like that, fast and full. Bloom House became a model other cities studied. Sophia spoke at conferences wearing a linen dress and sensible shoes, and always, when someone asked about innovation, she said, We put a kettle at reception and children in the gym. That's not innovation, that's remembering. On a late summer evening, after the last therapy session and before the security lights blinked on, Sophia, Dolores, and Matthew did what they had done, in one way or another, since the day in the park. They sat in the garden and told the truth. Any regrets? Sophia asked, stealing the question Dolores sometimes used like a key. I should have told you about Alejandro sooner, Dolores said, not as a wound but as a fact. But maybe you needed to arrive at the truth when you were ready to keep it. Sophia nodded. Maybe timing is part of truth. Matthew, who had grown into a young man who still laughed like a kid, stretched his legs out along the brick. I regret not meeting you sooner, he said, grin crooked. Think how many people we could have helped if I'd started when I was 5. You were very busy with crayons at 5, Sophia said. And we did okay. The courtyard fell into a comfortable hush. Somewhere beyond the wall a siren Dopplered passed and faded. Upstairs, someone forgot to turn off a lamp in the community room. Its light made a pale orange square on the grass. Do you still remember the pain? Matthew asked after a while, voice curious, not careful. I do, Sophia said. But it doesn't hurt. It's like a scar. It tells me where I've been, not where I'm going. Dolores squeezed her hand. Scars are maps, she said. We followed yours here. The roses, courage, kindness, keep going, breathed their evening perfume. Sophia looked at the two people who had remade her life with tea and breath counts and unreasonable hope, and felt the quiet, extraordinary certainty that what they had built would outlast them because it lived in other people now. Know what I love best about our story? She asked. That it has snacks? Matthew guessed. That it doesn't have an ending, Sophia said, smiling. We just keep writing new chapters. Matthew tipped his head back to the thin river of stars. Then tomorrow, he said, we write one where a kid teaches a grown-up a song. And a grown-up teaches a kid how to forgive himself for not being perfect. Put it on the schedule, Sophia told him. He pretended to write in the air with his finger. Done. They sat until the security lights blinked, until the garden settled into the soft grammar of night. In the morning, they would count breaths and plant seedlings, accept new intakes and welcome back old friends. They would make space for tears and for laughter, both of which watered the ground. And when someone asked, as they always did, how did you learn to walk again? Sophia would say the closest thing to an answer she knew. A boy taught my heart first. My legs followed. Then she would hold the door while someone else took their first step through.